Hi Peter, hi Sarah. So
Hi.
I'm very excited that you have decided to lead our first couple workshop at Filia early next year from January 27 to February 3rd. I actually attended a relationship workshop from you at Esalen over 4 years ago, and I really found it life changing. I really love all the interactive exercise you have, and definitely brought a lot of emotion, and was for me a catalyst to change one of my relationship. So, and in fact, uh, I'm excited to have you there today because this relationship, my relationship with Teal, is what really transformed my life. I've been with that wonderful woman just for 2 years, and so much has changed. So I don't think there is anything more powerful than relationship to really transform us at all aspects. That's why I really honor the work that you're doing and that you're coming to Filia. It's a really magical place. In fact, for me, this is a symbol of my own transformation. Because when I met you, I was really deep in the corporate world, and now I live with a spiritual teacher and facilitating retreats in Costa Rica. So that's definitely a big change, and I'm really glad you're going to be part of it. So before we get started, could you please maybe introduce both of you to our audience?
I want to do it how we would do it at a workshop, and that is we introduce each other.
Yes.
So let me share with you and everybody who's watching Sarah through my eyes. Sarah and I have been together for 22 years this year. We have an age difference. When I met her, I was 31 and she was 53. And we are life partners. Sarah's the love of my life. And Sarah is an incredibly gifted presence in the room. She has so much heart and compassion. I often relate to people that she reminds me of the Bodhisattva in the Buddhist tradition of compassion. She seems like she wouldn't judge anyone, and she'd find something good in every person she meets. And Sarah has a lot of experience working with women. She's an incredible supporter for women in their journey of sexuality and healing and becoming. And in our relationship, she brings so much of the beautiful creative spark that only women can bring, in a certain way that I really honor. And we work hard on our relationship and on our communication, and I feel very met by you as the partner. And it's just a joy to be in relationship with Sarah.
I agree. All right, Peter. I have been married before. I met Peter twice, and I was a little shy, being careful. And Peter was so very different than I would say anybody I'd met. He has a heart of gold. He is very smart as well. And the way I watch you connect with people, you have the ability to find out what's under what's happening, which is so important. So he takes people into themselves, and they usually come out loving themselves, which is so important. So as a partner, I have great taste. I chose right this time. Third time was the charm. Peter is really very gifted. I would say he doesn't even need to work at it. He's just him, and it's people clamor to be with him, and I can understand why. What else? So much to say. He's a dad, and if I could do my life over, I'd have him as my dad, because he's just wonderful with Jeremy, as he is with everybody.
You can tell we like each other.
He's the romantic. I'm a romantic too, but he's much more of a romantic than I am. So he brings such life to our relationship. I get notes and I get cards and I get all kinds of things from him that just keep my heart wide open. I didn't know love would feel this way.
Yeah, that's why I want you guys back here at Filia. I still feel I need to learn so much more because, romance and this little gesture of everyday life is so incredibly important. And I do the best I can, but I know I don't come close to what you're doing. And so I want to keep improving because there is nothing in life that can make us happier than a deep, intimate relationship. So I want to keep learning and I want to learn from the best.
And I think everybody at some level, obviously people have periods where they need time to not be in a relationship. But at some level, everyone wants to be seen for who they really are. They want to be valued, and appreciated for who they are. And they want a chance to show up. And I think a healthy relationship gives everyone a chance to become the better version of themselves that they want, if it's healthy and the constellation is right in the relationship. One of the things that we like to do is give people a chance to find and reinvigorate that initial romance. I don't mean just the sexual spark, because that comes too, but also that place where people meet and they're starry-eyed and they forget because of the busies of life. And so at our workshops with couples, we really want to help people find that again and relax and slow down and be with in a way that honors that initial connection. For some people who come, they might be at the beginning, and so coming might give them a roadmap or some tools to orient how to have a healthy relationship or set up a healthy relationship.
In fact, speaking about that, could you tell us more about the difference between the love infatuation that we all experience, when we fell in love, where there's so much energy at the beginning of a relationship, and then even as men, we set the expectation very high, but then lives happen, routine, and then
this is a friendly way. This is friendly.
Okay.
This is a friendly way of saying that what happens is you all go after us, and then once you have us, it's like we don't matter anymore. Yeah, that's the real story.
Yes.
That's really common.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's a part for that for women and a part for that for men in a heterosexual context. About we have certain principles that we believe in, what makes a relationship work. And I would actually say that you've really taken on, in the last several years, keeping sexuality alive in a way that makes it easier for me, to not have it just be a guy generating that. Initiation is another topic we find with couples, actually, that is important.
I think also after the initial stage of, wow, the busies set in, and how we've worked with that, because we certainly have busies, is we set time aside in our calendar. And that's one of the things that we teach. We call them date days. Sometimes they're half work, half date. But especially with children, when is our time? And so we set aside our time, and I think that's made a really big difference in our relationship.
And we schedule a sexual date every week that's different to a date day. A date day might include that, but it also includes some of the communication practices that we teach. And one of the things we're going to be teaching couples when they come to the workshop in January is what we call the joining ritual, and we have two versions of it. One's a short version that's basically just honoring a lot of eye-looking, putting bodies together without speaking, certain honoring practices. And then our longer version has a communication protocol that has 3 parts that get right to the core of what a lot of challenges, like underneath, where a lot of the problems present as what we think of as symptoms, but getting people to talk about forgiveness, getting people to talk about apologies, getting to stop resentments that are building up. And we do it in a very, very respectful, gentle way so that people, and we find that when people are communicating more honestly and deeply, there's more room for the romance we talked about earlier. But it's harder for that to flow when there's all these things in the way.
And if they'll do this joining ritual regularly, it just clears out the cobwebs and makes room for comfort and love and life.
And the other thing, to respond to what your question was, Ale, is that there's a part of the masculine that offers a kind of cherishing in a heterosexual context here to a woman. That my experience is that, I don't want to say like women need it, but when women experience being cherished, something opens up in the beautiful part of the feminine receptivity. When a woman feels safe and wanted, a lot flows back. And a lot of men forget that or don't know that, and so they don't know how to offer a certain kind of deep reverence to their partner that has them feel cherished.
And there is often some misunderstanding. I could see at the beginning of a relationship just looking at her eyes, touching her, that would be my whole day. I didn't need anything else. But as you said, then life sets in, and then I feel as a human doing, that's been my pattern all my life, I feel I need to do something, I need to achieve more success in order to deserve this love, when it's actually just a pattern of mine. If I, as you said, if I were just to focus in making her feel safe, if she could feel I fully feel her and see her, that would open her completely. Instead, I go to a pattern. No, and I'm working very hard on a tangent, which actually doesn't accomplish very much, you know. So,
but we're dealing with more than just that, though, with a lot of people. What we're dealing with is intimacy issues. So we've got attachment difficulties, usually laced to childhood, always laced to childhood. So what I notice is this pattern, especially in people who are struggling with an avoidant attachment, where it's like in the pursuit phase of a relationship, there's distance between yourself and the partner. Then when the other partner sort of turns towards that one and commits, that's the moment that avoidant attachment style starts to show up. And so now suddenly the doing becomes an escape from having to experience intimacy. So one of the biggest issues that I'm seeing even in my work is that you get into a dynamic with many couples, and Ale and I are no exception, where it's like only so close as I can still feel separate. So it's like the yo-yo effect. And so it becomes this torture of like, there's no way to bridge that gap, because I go forward, he goes back, I withdraw, he comes forward.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that one seems to be a really difficult pattern that I'm seeing show up for a lot of couples.
One of the things that, you know, we're very aware of that, and you're spot on, and how we've spent probably a quarter of each of our lives working with the Human Awareness Institute, love, intimacy, sexuality. In the intimacy piece, we don't use the euphemism of sex for intimacy. Intimacy is the ability to get closer and to stand near and to be honest about what you're feeling and let in at the moment where we're most frightened to let in. And some guidance and kindness with that is really important. And in the workshop that we do, we're going to approach that from a few ways. One is from communication. One is with non-sexual touch, because that often gets missed when people start to be sexual, and how to be filled up with non-sexual touch. And homework that will involve some sexuality that is in the privacy of their own rooms. And creating time just looking at each other and appreciating and saying what you see. That's part of that cherishing thing, like just slowing everything down. And what we find is a lot of people's terror with attachment in a really safe container can be abated, maybe temporarily in a workshop. I would hope that people leave having had the kind of closeness that you're talking about, that we all want. It's very human. Giving them a taste of that to land in that allows them to believe that there is something more for them beyond their patterns.
They get a taste, and hopefully then want more. We give them things to talk about. All right, now share about this, and we ask one to share while the other only listens and doesn't and suddenly come into the conversation and derail it. And the things that we give them are usually, for many people, vulnerable to share about. And my experience has been that it's when you're vulnerable that the intimacy is created.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
Yeah. But it's scary for some people. You know, they've been hurt. And so there's trepidation. But I think when we lead them into it, we lead them in safely. And we're also there to work with them if they're in struggle.
And our style is, and as you've tasted, Ale, is to be real, is to be ourselves, and we actually share a lot in the workshop around areas where we have challenges in relation to what we're encouraging people to look at and work on, so that we're not just being teachers that are offering an idea or a concept, but we're showing that we're doing it, and we're really in it with people. As you both know, life, the journey of being a couple, the work doesn't stop if you're available to continually looking and being humble, and it doesn't stop ever.
No, it never, ever, ever stops. And I feel like this is one of the travesties, is that we're set up in childhood to expect relationships to be a certain way, and that's the exact opposite of how they are. It's like if we're in our childhood approaching relationships as if they're a learning tool for our own expansion and for our, creating connectivity and this sense of oneness again in our singularities, then I feel like we would be expecting different things. But it's quite painful to have that sort of fairy tale expectation and enter into a relationship and realize that pretty much every one of your issues is going to be coming up in that relationship.
Right. It's so true.
It's like a path for expansion, because both Teal and I are so committed to our relationship, but we do experience struggles, and because of that, now we have to work on mommy's issue, daddy's issues. Yep. Like it never stops.
Yeah. One of the things that we encourage couples to do is to have a contained period of time to do that. So Sarah might say, I'm needing you to be a good daddy for me. And then we'll say, so let's do that for 20 minutes or half an hour. And then she can really fall into that. And then at 25 minutes, if it's a half an hour, say, so we've got 5 more minutes, come out of that state. So she gets to have the benefit, but also come out and reset in her adult self. What a lot of couples do is they just do it, and there's no boundary. And then people start to get blurred. Well, are you my daughter? Are you my wife? Are you my mother? Are you my love? What are you? Without it being clear, I'm going to be your dad for this period of time, or I'm going to be your sister for this period of time. Or that's one sort of frame that we've learned helps a lot of people to have clarity of boundaries. Some people can do it naturally and it's fine, but we find that a little bit of structure can help a lot of people to do that. And back to what you said earlier, which is about attachment, bonding and attachment. And a lot of us, people don't realize that they're not always healthy there.
In fact, it's actually quite rare for me to meet people and shake hands with them and have them be in a healthy space.
Yeah.
Another tool that we offer couples is appreciations and how to do the appreciation. For example, thanks for making dinner, that was nice. But thanks for making dinner, how it has me feel is like you're really looking after me. You're really looking to give me something that I want, and it makes my heart warm. And then we ask them to practice. And again, it opens up the field of intimacy because you feel seen. And one of the things we do is ask them, I would say to Peter, what would you like me to appreciate you for? Because that often, I appreciate for what I see, but not be the thing that he most wants to be appreciated for.
God, that triggers me already. I can feel my own issues with
that. This is so important because, a lot of us in the spiritual field, we had difficult childhoods. So then we become self-improvement addicts. So we are always trying to fix, focusing on what's wrong. And as you said, Sarah, it's so important to give appreciation of what's great about each other. Otherwise, this is not a relationship. This is a place where we inflict pain to each other and making each other feel how inadequate we are.
I would say, I think I worked out I've led over 25,000 hours of workshop time. And, I've worked one-to-one with people for more than 10,000 hours. And I would say roughly more than 90% of people have childhood challenges, even people who are actually healthy now. There's a few people who really didn't have bad childhoods or challenging childhoods, but it's very, very uncommon.
Sadly.
And so a lot of people want to not even look back there. And I think part of the intimacy, when people get safe, so as people get together and they have the new relationship energy and they start to have a nice thing going, and often there's sexual energy. And then when we get safe, people want to start to have someone really hear their experiences of childhood or their wounds. And some people are like, well, I didn't sign up for that. So the bubbles pop there. Or to be able to stay with someone and not therapize them, but really be present with them is really a crucial part of that early relationship development.
Can you tell us how you assess compatibility in a couple? I remember one thing you said in a workshop. In a workshop, it's either you deepen that intimacy, or if it's not meant to happen, then at least people are going to get clearer about the action they have to make faster. So what is compatibility and how do you assess it?
Do you want to take this on or me?
You go ahead and I'll pipe in.
There's a little compatibility moment there, checking in. Well, Sarah and I, if you look at us on paper, are not meant to be together. We're from different countries. We're from different generations. And we often, when we're talking, especially earlier on, would look at each other like we'd use the same language and we were clearly speaking different meanings. We often have the expression that are divided by a common language. So compatibility, I think, is sometimes a mystery, to be honest. Sometimes I look at couples and I think, why are they together? And then when I talk with them, there's clearly something really strong. Sometimes it's around a common developmental theme, like two people might find spirituality in common or religion, or they might find sports in common. So there's often an initial joining point, but deeper compatibility, I like to think of it as there's an energetic match. So it doesn't have to be that they're the same, but being able to have someone that can be with all of who I am and not retract. Because often what people say in the beginning is, I'm in for everything, but as soon as they hear the first problem, they were like we call them relation dinghies as opposed to relationships, like those little rowboats. And as soon as there's a first problem, plop, and it all falls apart and it sinks. So how do you create a ship? And that takes time. But I think part of it is alignment on core values. And so one of the things Sarah and I discovered early on is that we had a lot of value similarities, even though we were so different. And one of our value similarities is that a relationship is a vehicle for spiritual development and spiritual growth. So that's a really common, and I would say alignment on core values, and when you discuss the future, you can see a common brightness of future. Those are two things that I often look for when I'm, meeting with people or talking with couples. And I also think fun, like being able to play and let the little kid out, is a really important part of compatibility. Some people are adults in little child's bodies from a very young age.
Oh, that's us. Like, play. Neither of us play. Like, we have the hardest time with play. It's crazy.
We're workhorses.
We have ways to bring that out. We have a lot of fun in the workshop.
Yeah, you're going to enjoy it. It's going to be really great to do it because we have really deep, serious moments. We have very tender, emotionally intimate and touching without sexuality. And there's a lot of playfulness. And what comes up for some people is, back to bonding and attachment, some people miss that, the play as kids. And so refining that is kind of a pretty tender but sweet thing for a lot of people.
And awkward for some. But, this is what we're going to do now. And other people are doing whatever it is, and usually they get into it.
Sarah is an absolute goofball. She just did this 10-week program doing stand-up comedy, and she just did this 10-minute thing in where people paid to come in, standing up, really talking about her own life and laughing at it. And just everyone, she's just got this such charming humorous side to her. A lot of people like Sarah because of her humor, even though, as I mentioned, she's incredibly deep as well. But it's quite a beautiful addition. And
So if I can remember it that long, I'll do it for you when I'm there. My little stand-up routine.
yeah, lots of plots. We bring that in.
Where do you think that most relationship experts go wrong?
The thing that pops to mind is, oh, I'm trying to change the other one. How can I help you change them? And yeah, you have to accept them and love them the way they are, and then you can talk about whether you want to change or not.
And I think some also have a prescribed formula that they use. And, our style is to primarily be with people where they are, like really be with, and not have a goal, and really work right where people are. And I think that if people come in with an agenda, it really, it isn't handy. Some relationship experts have written books or created a particular theory, and they're only focusing on that. We tend to be very eclectic and draw from, the best of the best. And where a very big thing for us is helping couples to hear each other where they are.
And you, Teal, from an extrasensory perspective, how would you see compatibility between two people? Are you able to see that, or are you often are surprised between what you see and what would actually happen in a couple?
Well, the problem is that in a multidimensional universe, everybody who finds each other is compatible perfectly because they're a vibrational match. So if they have lined up with each other, there's always these points of, let's call it attraction, right? So what I see is that when two people are attracted to each other, there's always this incredible potential for expansion, both individually and as a couple, inherent within that coupling. And it's not always comfortable. I mean, I'm going to get quite aggressive and tell you that this is true even for someone who's getting beaten by their husband or wife. Because the reality is that there's an unhealed aspect of them that makes them a vibrational match to that, and then by virtue of experiencing that in the physical dimension, it causes them to expand further, to give rise to new desires, new thoughts, new ways of being. So, up there, everyone is a perfect match. But down here, if I'm looking at what we usually want, which is a happy relationship, compatibility, oh my god. A lot of that is dependent, I think, on how authentic people are. Because how authentic? Because a lot of people, they just want connection, right? I just want connection, doesn't matter who it's with, and so we don't take into account the difficulty of say, coming from a different generation or coming from a different age bracket, and sometimes that can work, right? Sometimes it actually can't.
Yeah.
So it's like compatibility can't be a blanket statement. It has to be like looking at this person, what they genuinely need and want, and what this person genuinely needs and wants. Can they come together to create something beautiful, or is this going to be disharmony? For example, somebody like myself, if I'm in a relationship with somebody who likes privacy, for example, that's going to be a disaster. That's an incompatibility, because my expansion, my happiness is about openness. That would be an example of an incompatibility. Whereas for some people, let's say somebody felt a little bit uncomfortable with it, but their expansion was to be more authentic and open, it might be an uncomfortable but perfect unity, you see.
I completely agree with everything that you've said, Teal. And one of the moments when relationships transform and break up is when one person breaks out of that locked mutuality and expands in a different direction, and now the compatibility starts to deteriorate, and then you now have someone leaving and being ready for an upgrade, as I call it.
Yeah, exactly. I actually did a whole video on this. It was the real reason why we're scared to change, because there really is that moment where you realize that by changing in some way, you are altering even the frequency you resonate at, and so it is quite possible that you resonate out of range with the people that are currently in your life.
Yeah.
It's so painful. It's scary. I've had those moments in relationships where I'm like, at this moment, if I heal this one pattern, we won't be together. Now it's like a moment of truth. Am I more committed to my own expansion, or am I more committed to this relationship? And if we're lonely, it's tempting.
Yeah, and I would say alignment is so, I said earlier about alignment of core values, but there's alignment within oneself, and when that's not matching anymore or not being met, then people, aren't. When we went through the financial crisis, and Sarah and I had extended debt and bought a lot of real estate, and then it crashed, and we made a promise together that in 2008, when it was all falling apart, we sat down and we said, this is going to be bad for a few years for us. And this could break us up. This is the kind of thing when couples have an outside stress like this, it magnifies the internal stresses, similar to what we're talking about. And one of our core values is love. It's just to cultivate and stay in love. And so we reminded each other of that. And we said, no matter what happens, we will not leave love. We will never blame each other for how we got here. We will never go into a victim place and say it's all my fault. We will not have those conversations. They're not available.
And we never did.
And it made us stronger. It actually, back to alignment, it made that core value of love, because we lived it through a really big challenge, it really made it even more deeply embedded for us.
I got a good question for you guys.
Yeah.
How do you see trust in relationships?
Top of the list.
But for most people, it's abstract, right? So for most people, the concept of trust is super abstract. So if you were talking, sort of dumbing trust down for people, what would you say?
If you were what?
Dumbing down trust.
Well, I would say relationship's not going to fly if you don't have that trust. And sometimes you have to just choose trust when it doesn't ring true. And talking. I see lots of relationships where they stop talking, and it's sort of a downhill slide after that.
I would say it's one of the areas that we really look at in relationship. And I think trust and safety are aligned.
Oh, man.
And, there's also the trust of the body, because we have body memories. Mm-hmm. And so when someone has a trauma response, for example, they need to feel safe before they can process. But we're back to intimacy again. We're back to emotional and physical intimacy. That the experience of one-to-one, more vulnerability and more realness and more authenticity, as you said, builds trust. And the withholding of that and the deflections that people do, which are behavior patterns, which are basically defense strategies, and not owning those decreases trust. But even when someone says, I'm having trouble with trust, I'm having trouble trusting you, well, that's actually a trust-building statement. If I'm being humble and I'm willing to have the conversation about, why am I not feeling trust with you? And back to what we talked about earlier, to take off the projections of past relationships, siblings, high school, and be aware that we have those overlays of our own biases and of our own projections. When people are talking about that, at that level, it really builds trust very quickly, we find. But avoiding conversations that are real, that brings out our authentic self, takes away from trust. And I think what you're touching on is people are looking for, can I trust this person?
Oh, yeah.
And can I trust, if there's someone has an addictive past or a challenged past, can I trust myself to speak my boundaries and my requests with that person? And then this brings us to another topic of needs. Well, I find that a lot of people are very unaware of their own personal needs.
Oh my, completely blind to them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really sad. I teach a lot about this just because, especially when it comes to emotional needs, it's like we're living in the age of complete ignorance relative to emotions in general, but especially emotional needs and how to get them.
Right.
I'm not really an exception. When I started into this business, it was like, A, what the hell are they? And B, how would you even create that? I have no idea how to do that, especially because nobody in my childhood did those things.
Right.
So,
right.
But let's say you've done the first step and you understand your needs. Now, in a relationship, how do you work through a need conflict?
We want to know what you guys say about this, because this is in our relationship, it is the issue.
And I feel we are very compatible, but sometimes we face some situation where we do have a need conflicts. And we built some protocols to work through that, but we like to improve and see how we can make each other feel safer in the process.
So we have something that's really quite simple, but works on many different things, needs being one, is a 1 to 10 measurement. And 10 means it's really a big need, and 1 is And we can use it on anything from, do you want to go to Japanese food or Mexican food tonight? Well, I'm a 5 for Mexican, and he's a 3 for the other one. And all right, well, we'll do it my way.
The other thing is to be able to discern between preferences and needs, and people often mix those two up. So I might have a strong preference to go to Japanese food, but the need is I have to eat, because if I don't eat, right? And so I always bring people back to the body about needs as a starting point. Like, we need air, we need water, we need food, we need sleep, and we need sex. And we need emotional intimacy.
So Sarah, what do you do? What do you do if both have a 10? That there's a conflict and both say it's 10, I can't live without that.
This right here in our relationship, this is how trust has corroded. Is when it's a 10 and 10. And so it's literally, it becomes a zero-sum game where one loses and one gains.
Some of the situations that might be a 10-10 are something that one of you can have it this time and the other a different time, like taking turns on what that need is.
Another thing I think is that whenever the two 10s are presented, I would actually say if an 8 or a 9 or a 10 is presented, both of the people are in that range, even an 8 and a 10, it's time to slow down. Because what people tend to do when they feel a need might not get met is they go into their defense pattern, either aggressive or collapse, or 2, getting rigid and trying to work out what the rules are, being codependent and giving themselves away. Mm-hmm. That there's certain defense patterns. And so what we really encourage people to do is to slow right down. Like, okay, so we're in a needs conversation now. We know that if one of us, if it gets too heated here, we're going to go into whatever our relationship pattern has evolved, or our relationship norms. We don't want to go into that pattern. So there's another need, which is to slow down and be present and really hear and understand the other one's need. And when people are busy, they don't want to do that. Yep. Something I call attending to the need.
Another, call it a trick, I don't know if that's the right word, is to step into the other person's shoes. So I'm going to argue for him, and he's going to argue for me.
I do that with couples on stage. I have them like literally go into each other's bodies. It's funny.
Right. Yeah. Right.
I mean, something we do try to get into each other's perspective, and then do a lot of mirroring, even if we don't see.
I feel like people should, like, everyone should have therapists, if you can find good ones. I don't understand, well, I do understand it, but I also don't understand the way that we are about getting help. I feel like it is, like, the idea of a young couple having no older couples for tutelage is insanity.
Yeah.
Like, it's nothing short of that. But yeah, Ollie and I, we come from one of these relationships where the external stressors on this relationship are, oh my god, like stuff that most people will never have to deal with, type of thing. And also being in the public eye makes it extra bad. So,
one of the other things that we teach that has something to do with this here is how to listen to their partner.
Yeah.
And getting them to give back to their partner what their partner just said without twisting it themselves, so that their partner can feel heard, is huge.
It's a kind of mirroring communication, and you may do this yourselves, but it's really all about the one who spoke feeling heard. So we might have 3 goes at the same thing, and Sarah will say, no, you didn't get quite right, and I'll be like, so what am I not getting here? I think I'm saying the words right. And she'll say, well, you're not getting the feeling quality. I'm like, oh, dang, I don't want to get the feeling quality because then I have to admit that I'm wrong or whatever.
Right. Yeah.
But it's getting the feeling quality that allows me to actually be in her shoes.
That's awesome. Because like the big issue that I watch with mirroring is when people literally, it's like they'll turn themselves off emotionally. They'll just go into a mental like, okay, I'm out. Now I'm just going to be a robot so that you feel like I heard you. And
Right.
oh yeah.
It's difficult, but something I've learned with Teal is I'm a problem solver. So let's say she would be in a difficult state. So of course my first reaction is, okay, how do I solve it? But she wouldn't feel hurt, felt understood. So I got to know that if she feels I really understand her, feel her, see her, 50% of the issue is already gone.
Yeah, like 50% or more.
What she's really struggling with.
So well that I think he agrees with me.
Yeah.
But he's not. He's just really stepping into my shoes.
And this is touching on a topic of polarities. Some people refer to this as the masculine feminine, but I don't actually like that overlay all the time because it distracts people into thinking male, female, or the stereotypes we have. But we all have a polarity of a plus and minus in our body, and being balanced within ourselves is really crucial. And a lot of people aren't. So if the plus polarity is action, driving, getting things done, and the minus polarity is receptivity, well, the most obviously one in a male female body is a penis and a vagina, just to be frank, a plus and a minus, right? But we all need to have the experience of being in a receptive or the minus, and we all have to have the experience of being in the plus. And we live in a world that values plus more. Yep. And I mean, the ultimate minus is the Earth. Well, the Earth's actually balanced, but I think of the Mother Earth as being, the mother of us all. We don't honor our mother. We don't honor what it offers to us and how it receives so much of what's going on in the world. And I think in a relationship, when you said that you often want to go to the solution or getting things done, that's a very plus response. What can I do to make a difference or fix this problem? And it's often very commonly presented in a male body, but not always. And so listening is a receptive quality, but not listening with a solution in mind. And so for people who have a tendency to be over plus, where I really advise them is that you don't have to, the task you have is to be receptive. It's a bit of a mind flip. So the task you have is to do nothing but switch to receiving. And when people frame that as a task, for people who are very task-oriented, it can work. But you've got to have the balance within and the balance between you.
Yeah.
It's good if you want your partner to win as well.
Yeah.
That's really...
Well, I want to win, and he wants to win. And I want him to win. And if the mental framework is that way, it sort of goes back to, oh, they got me. Yeah, I feel gotten.
Back to the Hendricks in the 90s wrote a book about getting the love you want and, finding out what your partner wants and giving it to them is it's not the only formula, because you have to have your own needs, but having an orientation to what do you need? Because what often we give in a way that we want to receive, often not being aware of really honoring what our partner needs, which might be a completely different way that they switch on or receive or wake up. And so really listening to that.
So do you guys work with helping people become aware of their needs? Because that is the issue that I'm finding a lot with couples is that even if you've got one partner who, say, wants to meet needs, you often have another one that doesn't even understand what it is. So it's like both are fumbling around in the dark, usually missing each other.
Listening what you guys are saying, I think I got a new definition for compatibility. Because I remember Teal listing all her needs, and there were a lot.
I'm aware of my needs.
Yes, and it was very challenging and demanding, but I realized if I actually could all these things, I'll be such a better man. That makes me a better person, and actually that's the direction where I want to be.
You are making me sound like you're completely evil.
So that's why I felt there was compatibility, because at least where she wants me to be, it's really good for me, and I hope vice versa. It's when my path of growth is now in conflict to where she wants me to be, that's where we really end up in conflict. I mean, another pattern we experience quite a bit as well, because she's very, very perceptive, she sees things in me that I don't even see in myself.
This is my pet peeve.
And first, of course, I'm going to be defensive because, you know, no one wants to be exposed and see the wrong thing we have in us. But I've learned over time it's better to say, okay, shut up, try to understand what she meant, try to really interiorize it. It comes from a good intent. Don't go into denial, because actually, if I'm really vulnerable and I start seeing what she sees, she feels way better, and she's actually very supportive. But if I get in denial, then I get her angry. So,
well, being aware of defense strategies, and this is going to sound paradoxical, being undefended about our defense strategies is a really key way. Like, oh, I'm doing my thing again.
Yep.
And it's way more efficient to call it on yourself than have your partner have to be the one that tells you you're being defensive again.
Mm-hmm.
So there's something about humility around our defenses, and
not making yourself bad.
We find that a lot of couples in the first 2 or 3 years go through what we've decided to call the right-wrong game.
Oh, yeah.
Trying to be right or trying not to be wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
and
I feel like...
That wouldn't work with you.
What do you mean it wouldn't work?
Like if I was trying to tell you things as they are and you don't see it.
Well, then your verbiage can be very important.
Yeah.
Like, my perception is not that you did do, but this is how it's landing in me. How is that for you?
And I think that I want to just applaud you for both of you for being honest that you're at a phase at the moment where there's challenges for you. That's really normal, right? And I think just admitting that is really powerful because it makes you not perfect. And in the work you do, you can just be an example. And it's very much how we are too. Like, we don't pretend that we're a perfect couple. We're so human. And it makes the conversation between you more real too, doesn't it?
Oh, hell yeah. It drives me crazy when people pretend to be otherwise. Like, it's, to be honest, way back when we had this issue generations ago where it was like it didn't matter whether you were in a total crap relationship, you were staying in that relationship anyways, which is not healthy. But I feel like we are actually in the opposite paradigm right now, especially in my generation, my God, where it's like, if anything goes remotely uncomfortable, now suddenly you're not meant to be together. I'm like, my God, you guys. Like, there are aspects of a relationship that are going to be torture, frankly, especially if you've had a lot of trauma when you're younger, you're going to run into that again. So I feel like if people in our types of position give the impression that it should always feel good, we are doing a huge disservice.
Yeah.
We talk about the bumps that we've come across and how did we deal with them.
I mean, most couple therapists would actually say when the couple come with a problem, they really need the individual psychotherapy. So, from your perspective, which, is it 90% of the time when there is a couple issue, it has to do with an individual trauma, or is there actually couples issue, or mostly individual issues projected onto the couple?
Yes.
Yeah. All of the above.
All of the above. So one of the things is the intrapersonal awareness, like what's going on inside of myself. And then there's the interpersonal, what's going on between us. And then what's going on in her intrapersonally. They're all going at the same time. And I think, when you said earlier, Teal, I'm triggered by that. We'll talk about appreciations and, making sure that the needs met kind of thing. And I think being aware, this is an internal trigger for me, or this is just a communication issue. Like, you're just not understanding me now. I'm not triggered.
Yep.
We're just, so I think being able to be aware, what is it? Or this is a deep one for me. This has happened in every relationship I've been in. It's actually not about you.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of people aren't aware of the different levels or the different places to look. Oh, it's just not working. Fuck it. Or screw it or whatever,
Yep.
But I think being able to see there's lots of places to look. Looking at family of origin is one place. Looking at relationship history is another. Look at bonding and the way I do friendships and connections. There's lots of places to look. And I think it's really important to not... We're very into trying not to label people, but really being with what's presented and being very compassionate and very human with what's presented. And inquiring, and providing inquiry for people so that they can have more of that interpersonal learning.
Yeah. And taking responsibility for the couple's reaction. For example, very often I realize at the beginning, like Teal would act out in specific situation, and then I realized it was just my inner child that I'd repressed, that was coming through Teal, but it was a part of me I absolutely didn't want to see.
You still don't want to see it because you called it acting out.
Exactly.
I'm
still pushing it down.
Stop him and say that you choose other words other than acting out because it hits.
Yeah.
So it's
because when something's triggered on the inside, it doesn't really matter. We're going to label someone because labeling is a defense strategy, right? So it's like, oh, I'm triggered. Sometimes these days we'll be like, I'm really triggered. We'll grin. It's like, okay, a little bit of work to do here. And do I stay engaged when I'm triggered? Do I pull away and go and call a friend? Do I go and meditate and sit with it? Like, having options when we're triggered is really important too.
When I've gotten triggered over the past, my modus operandi is to get very cold and polite and leave without leaving. Mm-hmm. And I would do it for weeks at a time.
I call it her ice queen.
And I've made it a game, I guess, for myself to see how fast I can come back. Okay. Because I've lost that time of being in love because I've been frigid, cold. And we actually worked out a system where if I've gone away, that he'll try and bring me back. And if I don't come, then I have three choices. One is to crawl in his lap and cry. One is to pound pillows. And the other is to just tell him off. And he welcomes that so that we can get our hearts back together. And man, I don't want to do any of it. Yep.
We've just learned for ourselves, and I'm not going to say it's a formula for everyone, that creating an action when we're feeling really separate and we're locked down into being separate is really the key. Like, it's sort of like we've got to do one of these three things, or we're both going to suffer, right? We're going to suffer for a long time.
That could be its own book. Like, strategies for that lockdown could be its own book, because every relationship that I've ever been in gets into one of those locks, and it's just like torment.
In fact, it's interesting you spoke about this pattern, because for me, I wouldn't even call that triggered, because I would be disconnected, but because I wouldn't feel pain, I didn't think I was triggered. So I didn't see any problem with me until I realized that I was not really triggered, I was dissociated. Like, my inner child was completely gone. What was really going on is dissociation, and that's what I'm working on right now.
Right.
Well, we had to step into, back to the trust that you brought up, to trust each other enough to give them what we call veto power. So he has his veto card, and if I won't get off of it, then he can pull his veto card and give me a choice of one of those three, and I cannot say no, because I've agreed ahead of time to give him that power, and he has done the same for me.
We very rarely use it. So part of the trust thing is to not just pull it out. Veto, that's not a very trust-building moment. Maybe once every 2 years, we'll really pull the veto card out. I can say to Sarah, honey, I've got a veto card in my pocket, and that'll be enough for her to say, okay, what do you want me to do? In a way where he's playing with it.
What do you want me to do?
Right. But it's very rare that we have to say, okay, come and crawl in my lap, or do you want to tell me off? Sarah likes me to bend down on my knees. She likes to wag her finger at me. It really makes her feel great. I do everything I can to not laugh because it's so funny to me, and then I'm smiling. She's saying, "What are you laughing at?" I'm saying,
And then pretty soon I'm laughing.
And then we're through it,
It's gone. But that's sort of a technique that we invented for us, and it takes a lot of trust to give the other person the veto power. Mm-hmm. Now, we used it in an argument or me disappearing, but also there was a time when there was the problem in Sendai with the leaking of nuclear stuff,
After the tsunami.
And he spent 3 years living in Sendai years ago, and he wanted to go back and help and see. And I thought, But I was going to use my veto if I had to, but I held back, and he got there himself that, no, he needs to be home and he has a family and it's dangerous over there. And so we try to use it as seldom as we can.
Use your veto for me not riding motorcycle.
Yep.
What was that?
Motorcycle riding.
Oh.
Are the roads in Costa Rica dangerous?
Oh my god, they're so bad. They are so bad. Yeah.
Well, I'm glad we're going to be at the retreat.
Yes.
I wanted to just talk a little bit about the retreat, actually, and, because I'd like people who are listening to get an idea of both our combination of what we're offering, because we've talked about this a lot, and it's a dream come true, I think, for both of us, for us to come and be with you in such a beautiful place, Ophelia, and such a nourishing place. It's certainly what appealed to us, and it's very in alignment with our values about healthy relationship, having healthy food and a healthy environment. And then I think for you to bring couples work, you've expressed that to us, that's really of high quality. And I want people to see that they're coming, it's not just a holiday, but they're really coming for both an outer and an inner retreat, to rejuvenate themselves personally, to be well fed and rested, to have time to reflect, and to have nourishment on the outside for their relationship, so that they leave after the time there feeling completely renewed and people say to us after our couples classes that they feel like they've got a new start on their relationship. And that's a big thing, like to feel like I'm clear enough from past challenges to have a new start is huge. And we'll have people have so much time relating to each other, as I said, in many ways, both physically, tenderly, sexual time in the privacy of their own space, verbally, really enriching. And they'll have the support of us and you and your team to really help them in the moment if they're having a problem. Like, it's not like they have to feel like they're not supported. Like, we're all there to help them talk or understand or what have you, so that people have that kind of backup, which is incredibly rare, actually.
And when we work with a couple, if they're in struggle, and we do it in front of the rest of the group learns a whole lot without having to be the one being worked with. Yep. And we have small groups that they go into, and they get to talk with other couples and see, oh, you too? How'd you deal with that?
Yep.
And another thing we ask them is, would you be willing, both of you, to commit to what we call closing the back door for the time that we're in session, or that we're there? In other words, there's no way out. We're in. How are we going to deal with what's here?
So many people have a backdoor clause, like, I'll trust him if, or I'll trust her if, or if he does or she does this behavior, I'm out. We want people to seal over that escape clause and have the experience, even if people have been together a long time. Because I know couples are going to come who are new, couples are going to come who've been together for a couple of years or a couple of months, couples are going to come who've been together for a lifetime or 10 years. There's lots of people that come at different stages. But the idea of closing the back door and being 100% committed for the duration, which will be 5 days, I guess.
Find out what that feels like.
And just have that experience. And at the end we say, okay, if you want to open your back door, you're welcome to. And a lot of people are like, no. But give them that choice, right?
Yeah.
Well, that's fantastic. I think I'm really excited. We're all very excited, as well as probably many people listening to this video right now. So,
where do they find out about this retreat?
philiacenter.com. Or on Teal Swan, there is a link to our center. But we can't wait to have you come to our magical center. And again, thank you so much for today and for helping so many couples out there and to spread the love. You're doing a very important work.
And how about we put a link on the landing page that if people have any questions of us about the class, that we're happy to answer people's questions directly, like not a secretary or an executive assistant or something, but so that people can start to relate to us beforehand if they need that. Obviously, a lot of people will just know that it's right. People look and they can feel us through this and will know, yeah, I want to do that. And but if people have questions, really welcome to contact us and we'll provide those answers.
I'm looking forward to it.
Us too.
Thank you so much. Talk to you soon.